Hey everybody, it's Amedeus, it's Jim, and we are here on a Monday. And Amadeus, since last week spoke to each other, a lot has happened in college basketball as we now have the Sweet 16, and a bit of a surprise. Most of it's chalk.
Yeah, just that's really the thing that pops out at you the most. We had
Hmm.
a few crazy upsets on the
Yeah,
Thursday, Friday for sure, but yeah, going into the weekend, that second round was straight chalk. So much so to the point where one of the somebody who works at the sports books in Vegas came out
hmm
and said Saturday was the single worst day of the calendar year that the sports books have had. So definitely they got destroyed by the chalk on the weekend.
yeah, and I don't know. It's a couple of other things. One thing surprised me was that all of the ACC teams, went through. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't.
even NC State, who happens to be the lowest
Yeah,
seed left in the tournament now.
yeah. I mean, NC State's won 7 games in a row. So because they had to come in into the ACC tournament, basically that was a play in for them. They've literally had 7 looked like a pro team, and it was I don't know, Houston. Possibly the Houston Texas A&M game was one of the more entertaining ones of the bunch over the weekend. Yeah. I think it was 102 to 100 in overtime. Um, just crazy, just crazy. Yale got a
Yeah, we
win, and
saw
then
a
they
lot of
they got blown
scoring
out.
in these games too.
Yeah, defense optional. So let's see. And Coach Day down at Florida Atlantic is now headed to Michigan, where he'll be the head basketball coach.
Yeah, I saw that. We talked about how the move made sense for him to go
Hmm.
to a bigger school just because you
Right.
brought the team back
Hmm.
for this one season. They wanted to give it a shot again after
Hmm.
going to the Final Four. They weren't as good this year. Lost in the first round, rightfully so. They didn't belong in
Hmm.
the tournament over our nephews anyway.
Right.
And yeah, it was one of it was one of those things where you kind of knew the team was gonna fall apart, and it makes total sense to me that the coach is now jumping ship as well. And hey, what, I look at it like one less power for our boys at South Florida to get through
That's true.
next year.
Well, I mean, we've seen where coaches have done well in the tournament for the smaller schools, and then have ended up, leveraging that into a much better job. I mean, obviously, the last one that this happened to was, you know, Florida Gulf Coast. A lot of people didn't, had never heard of it, and now there they are in the Final Four, which is, it, we had it. Um, I don't know if I'm freezing up here or what. I see no
Yeah,
movement on
I
the
can hear
screen.
you
Can you?
now. I can hear you
Sorry.
now. Yeah, it's
Um,
having a bit of technical difficulties. Typical Monday here. You know what? What else is new?
it's Wait a minute. Let's see if this changes a second. We're having technical issues here for just 1 minute. Don't go away, folks. Hang on with you.
Typical Monday for us. Technical difficulties on both sides. Can't.
You
I don't know.
think? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with the audio issues today. Just been a huge problem. I can kind of hear you now.
Okay, you can kind of hear me now.
Yeah, better now. You're still frozen, but I can
Now,
I can hear you.
yeah, I know. I can. I wait a minute. I'm almost there. Uh, let's take a look at the Sweet 16 teams that are left, and North Carolina is still there. I don't know. I mean, again, we shouldn't be surprised. Iowa State, we said, was legit from the get go. They're still there. NC State, as you said and talked about, they're left.
Yeah, NC State. They're kind of the lowest seed left in the tournament right now. The sole 11 seed, and the next team, I guess, after
Right.
that would be Clemson as a 6 seed. So really, not too many seeds, obviously, or not too many low seeds left. Obviously, we talked about how it was a very chalky weekend, but one thing I did mention, before the tournament started, is that I didn't think we were going to see any 1 or 2 seed upsets in the first round, and sure enough, that we haven't seen any in the first 2 rounds because we have a 1 or 2 seed in every single game. You're on mute, Jim. Still muted. It's man, this the audio difficulties continue. Now we got the system muting us automatically now. And now what Jim is just completely frozen on my end. I don't know if I'm frozen as well, but all right, the freezing has stopped. Jim, you're still muted though. I can see you moving, but you're still muted. The audio and the technical
Unmuted
just
now.
there we go. Just not in our favor today for sure.
Yeah. Somebody doesn't want us on. Okay. So I'm a little discombobulated, folks. I apologize. Here we go. Where are we on the list of 16 teams?
Yeah, so the last thing I mentioned is just really, I mentioned before the tournament started we weren't going to see any 1 or 2 upsets in the first round, and here we are in the Sweet 16, and there's a 1 or 2 seed in every single game, so we didn't see any 1 or 2s go down yet.
We also thought that the Big East was undervalued. I mean, beyond, of course, the obvious, UConn, and there we see, a team from from the Marquette from the Big Ten. I'm sorry, the Big East, and Marquette is playing fantastic basketball as well.
Yeah, they've also gotten healthier, which really helped. It's funny because they ended up getting Kolek back in the first round, but they were missing. So I'm going to butcher his name, Iguodaro there, but
Right.
yeah, they were missing him due to an illness, and then they ended up they had them both back in the last game, and that was a tough one. Colorado was a hot team, obviously, high scoring team, one of the best shooting teams in the country, and that Marquette pretty much dominated that game start to finish. Obviously, it got a little hairy at the end there, but good on Marquette. Definitely came out and showed they're the team that we thought they were, and even Creighton, they struggled with Oregon in that game, but in the end, they pulled away by 12 points, I think, in the overtime there to win that one. So anytime you can, outshoot a team 15-2 in 5 minutes and win a game in overtime by 12 points is impressive to me, because when a game goes to overtime and you got a team like -6, -7, it's very rare they're going to cover that spread. And sure enough, Creighton went and did it with their 12-point win. So definitely very impressive there. Yeah, all three Big East teams on to the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm. And all 4 ACC teams on. And I guess the Big 12 had some issues, although Arizona came through. Well, Arizona's not in the Big 12. They're back. They're in the Pac-12.
Big 12.
So a Freudian slip on my part. Colorado looked good for 2 games. Then they got beat in, yesterday. I was a little surprised at Utah State. I thought maybe they would do better, but then again, they didn't have an easy task in playing a very tough UConn team. But as I said before, I don't know if we were muted or what, but the only big surprise to me is Clemson. I know that NC State's there, but Clemson surprises me because I just didn't think they were the kind of team that could make it that far.
Yeah, Clemson's definitely a surprise, especially since they knocked out Baylor in the last round. I was on Baylor myself yesterday, so wasn't great to see that. But yeah, it's funny with the ACC, these ACC teams. We talk about how their conference really isn't that strong. It's very top heavy, especially this season, and it's not one of the strongest conferences in the country yet. When it comes to the tournament, their teams, step up. We saw it with Miami last year, a team that wasn't really expected to go deep, and they went to the Final Four. Maybe Clemson's this year's Miami. We'll have to see. But the proof is in the pudding. All 4 ACC teams still moving on. So,
and San Diego State is back. Kudos to them. They weren't, they were a good team, but we didn't necessarily think that they had that kind of run left in them.
Yeah, I think the big thing for San Diego State is out of 6 Mountain West teams that made the tournament, they're the only one that survived to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, 100%. The thing that interests me now is we're now down to, as you said, these are all good teams. There's not there's not a clunker in this bunch. I'm going to say something. I'm going to piss some people off. I apologize in advance. I still don't think Purdue is going to be there in the Final Four. I just don't think it's going to happen. They played well, but they're so dependent on their front line basically scoring and not giving you a second shot, that if they come against a team who is athletic enough to be able to get space and hit threes, that could be a problem for them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's been pretty evident that Purdue is, one player in this tournament. They're great at hitting threes. I'll definitely give them that. And it's hard to defend because you got to make the choice. Are you going to double team Edey, or do you defend the 3? And obviously you're going to try and take Edey out of the game, which is going to open up the 3. But Purdue's got to play Gonzaga in this next round. And from the way Gonzaga has been shooting in this tournament, they could definitely give Purdue a run for their money. I totally agree with you. I personally didn't have Purdue in my Final Four. Now, I had McNeese beating them. That was obviously Gonzaga
things happen.
Took the throttle to them, but it wouldn't be shocked if Gonzaga was the team that kicked Purdue out. And even if Purdue gets past them, they'll have to face Creighton or Tennessee in the next round. And I'm sorry, but either one of those teams is not going to be an easy game for them either.
No, and but Zach Edey is a fine player. There isn't any question about it. But they fall off talent-wise, I would say in the 5 to 8 range, right? They got 4 guys who can ball out, but 5, 6, 7, 8 is where they're going to be sorely tested in the next round. It's going to be interesting, and full on to Creighton too. I mean, there's a team that has flown under the radar. I don't know how you can fly under the radar as good as they are, but you can, and they did. So they're there, and there's some very entertaining matchups coming up this Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, definitely. And you said we're down to the point where basically it's all good teams. We haven't seen like the huge upset. So it's all, you're getting the high seeds, the strongest teams, and it's reflected in the lines, because the biggest line this week is UConn -11, but they're playing San Diego State. You look at all these other games, you're not really getting high spreads. A majority of the games are in that 2-6 range, really. The only exceptions being Arizona as a 7-point favorite over Clemson, which might even be a little steep in my opinion. Arizona only covered by a half point against Dayton.
Right.
And the way Clemson's been playing, they could definitely keep that a closer game. Like they dominated Baylor the entire time. And then the other one is Marquette over NC State. And even then, that one's only 6.5 really. But everything else is pretty much 5 or less.
And Clemson has been a surprise team. There's no question about that. Frozen.
Yeah, little frozen.
Yeah. Hang on.
It's okay. We're grinding through it.
You got it? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. I can see you moving again. Oh, all right. I guess Jim's dealing with the technical difficulty as it goes all the way around. Wouldn't be a show without technical difficulties. That's just what we're known for. But until he gets back, I'll do some vamping. So as I was talking about with these games, you got a lot of close games here. Obviously, UConn -11 being the biggest spread, and then I mentioned Arizona at -7 and Marquette at -6.5. But a lot of these, very close game. We've got Alabama, North Carolina. North Carolina coming in as a 4-point favorite there. Iowa State, -2 against Illinois, -5 for Purdue against Gonzaga, and -4 for Houston against Duke, and -3 for Tennessee against Creighton. And it's funny because in every single one of these situations, you have the higher seed as the slight favorite. And I think we all know it's definitely not going to go down that way, especially since the first 2 rounds were super chalk, and the books even came out and said they got destroyed by the chalk. There's going to be some upsets in this Sweet 16 round, and I think the fact that these spreads are so low, doesn't matter to me if the spread is 2 or 4 at this point. I think a lot of these games are pick'ems, and when you take the points, or when you take the points with some of these dogs, I think you're going to be expecting the outright win here.
That's a very good point. And one of the things that I think is important to note is, there's a lot of people putting a lot of emphasis on, this team from the Big East, or this team from the ACC, or this team from name conference, right? They've been fantastic all year long, and that's probably true. Okay. Thing is, you only have to be better than now that we're at this point. You only have to be better than the other team on that day. You could lose to them 100 times out of 99 out of 100 times, but if you have a bad day, then you're sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen that already. Like look at Nevada. Nevada could have gone a lot deeper into this tournament, and one not even a bad day. They were dominating that entire game. You have a bad 5 minutes, and there goes your 17-point lead. And now all of a sudden you're flying home after the first game. So definitely, I think we've seen it in the first two rounds already, and we're going to see it again in the Sweet 16 for sure.
And that's where, and this is where the chalk is. We look at it and go, okay, cool. We get it. We understand. Uh, it's going to be a very interesting situation in seeing how this whole thing plays out, because, as you said, Vegas is going to be a little bit more uh, cautious in how they put the lines out. And you said, while I was switching over here, and you hit it right on the head, and that is Vegas. Vegas right now is not putting out big lines, and don't expect that they will.
Yeah, definitely, and that's how they get you too with a lot of these smaller spreads, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
take this Alabama North Carolina game for example. You got
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina as a -4. This
Right.
game is more of a pick'em, but just because
Mm-hmm.
it's a pick'em, you don't necessarily take the +4 with Alabama just automatically, because
Right.
believe me, North Carolina could win this game by double digits, as you said, right? Alabama has a bad game, and North Carolina
Mm-hmm.
shows up to play, easily could win the game by double digits. But if you're going to take Alabama +4, you're working under the impression that they're going to win the game. And that's where the
Mm-hmm.
short spreads come into play, because now it's one of those things where it makes it difficult when you give the higher seed or the better team or whatever you want to call it that short line, because now
Mm-hmm.
you're saying these games are pretty much pick'ems, but now you're saying, okay, I need the better team to win by 5. They could win the game, but it could be a very close one. Maybe they win by 2 or 3, as we saw. Marquette was a team, they dominated Colorado over the weekend, and they ended up winning by 4. If you got that spread late, it was 4.5, so you missed by the half point. So these are things you have to consider. If you're going to take North Carolina, you're not just taking them because they're going to win. You think they're going to dominate and really win. You really can't afford it to be a close game. Whereas if you're taking Alabama, you're not taking Alabama with the hopes of, well, if it goes down to the wire and it's close, maybe North
Mm-hmm.
Carolina just edges them out by a point or two. No, you're taking the +4 under the impression, I think North Carolina can win, or sorry, I think Alabama can win this game outright. So there's definitely, when it comes to handicapping these games, there's so much you have to consider all the time.
That's all good. Yeah, those are all good points. And the only other one that I would add to it is what we've seen in some of these close games. Right, is a parade for all intents and purposes to the free throw line. So, take a look at who's hitting those free throws. When you start doing your research on the teams, those free throws are crucial down the stretch. You miss one, and it could be the difference between you winning your wager or not. Number one, and your team winning or not.
Yeah.
Yesterday in the NIT game that South Florida was playing against VCU, uh, they had a chance for a 3-point play the old way, and the kid walks up to the stripe, and the free throw would have tied the game with about a minute left to go in the game. He missed the free throw. VCU gets the rebound, and they had to immediately foul the guy, and that's what caused the march to the charity stripe over the last 45 seconds of the game.
Yeah, it
So
changes the complexion of the game, because, as you said, you tie it up. All of a sudden, VCU takes more time to think about their play, try to get maybe an easy 2 and take some time off the clock. Whereas now you've put yourself in a position where you're still down by 1. If VCU hits a 3, it's a 2-score game. Or, as you said, South Florida has to foul, and then all of a sudden, if they make 2, it is a 3-point game, and it's a lot harder to tie it
Right.
with that three than to just, drop a good play and drive the basket or get an easy two.
Yep. And CBS just came out with they reseeded the top, the Sweet 16. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go through the seeding with you, and you let me know whether you think you agree or disagree. All right, UConn is number one. I'm not going to disagree with that. All right. Purdue, based on wins of 28 and 39 points, they feel that, CBS feels, that the closest team to beating UConn is Purdue. I might, I don't know. I don't know that anybody can beat UConn at this point in time. But, they are number one seed. So, again, we talked about it. We talked about the fact that Zach Edey is an, he's averaging 26.5 points a game and 17.5 rebounds in the 2 wins. That's those are almost unstoppable points.
Yeah, I would say that's fair just because from what we saw from Houston last night, I mean, they had a big lead with 2 minutes left and they let Texas A&M go on that 13-3 run to tie the game and send it to overtime. That was not impressive. Plus, Houston, if you look at the stats, Houston is not even in the top half for shooting this season out of the 362 schools in Division I. They really aren't an accurate shooting team. They lean on that defense, which is number one in a lot of categories, and giving up, what was it at by the end of overtime? 95, 100 to 95. They won. Giving up 95 points to a mediocre SEC team does not give me the optimism about your defense going forward against the stronger teams left in the tournament.
Right. And then they've seeded North Carolina third, which, they had the toughest second round, I'm sorry, draw of any team. And they had to play Michigan State. We've already, you and I were not huge fans of Michigan State, but we said that Tom Izzo is, knows how to get teams ready for, for the tournament. And basically, he had many of the same kids that played for, Michigan State last year when they made it to the Sweet 16, were pretty much on the same team this year. So, I mean, I can see where Carolina gets props, and they should for the time being.
Yeah, I don't hate it because I thought what they did was impressive, right? They did what Baylor couldn't do against Clemson. UNC went down early in the game. It was like 24-13 or something. They were down by double digits, and I don't know. So they just flipped the switch, and all of a sudden they were up like 34-24 before you could even blink. They just stopped Michigan State from scoring and went on a huge run. So I think, and as you said, I would say, I know we've been hard on Michigan State this year, talking about how they shouldn't have been in the tournament, but of the teams compared, who UConn and Purdue faced, definitely I would say North Carolina had the stronger opponent there with Michigan State for sure.
Sure. And
especially the coaching aspect too. Obviously he's a guy that has success in the tournament. So that's tough team to beat. I will give respect to the Tar Heels for that.
Then we have Houston at 4. And, look, they had, it's kind of hard to quantify this, but Houston had to play Texas A&M, okay? And unless you live in the state of Texas, you don't know how much the rivalries of like a Houston versus a Texas, or a Houston versus a Texas A&M or an SMU or whatever. Every school in the state of Texas hates the other school. So, not only did they get Texas A&M, which is a good basketball team, but they also got, a team that despises them almost as much as they despise, Texas A&M. So that's actually, pretty amazing situation. And, they they scored 95 points on Texas A&M. That's almost unheard of because Texas A&M has they get there by defense. They don't normally get there by their offense. So a very
I
interesting
think
situation.
I think the drop to 4 is warranted for Houston because, like I said,
Mhm.
I get it. It's a tough SEC team that you're playing in Texas A&M. And as you said, the Texas rivalry is there. Obviously, Texas A&M is going to get up for it when they know
Mhm.
Houston's the number one ranked team in the country coming into the tournament. But they had multiple opportunities to put Texas A&M away, and they
Right,
did even when there was 2 minutes left. You all you have to do is not let the other team go on a 13-3 scoring run, and you win the game in regulation. So
right.
definitely, Houston worries me going forward. We'll have to see.
Here's another team that worries me going forward: Arizona. You know, when they played Long Beach State in the first game, Long Beach State made things interesting early. Then they played Dayton. And Dayton made the game interesting late. But Arizona was able to find a way to come through and win. Now their original seed was 6, and now they've been pumped up, one step on the totem pole here to number 5 in the rankings. The number 6 team. The reason I'm not stopping here is I just want to throw this combination up to you. The number 6 seed in the reseeding is Iowa State. Now they were originally an 8. I think Iowa State has done a really good job of impressing, me, anyone who watches them play, that they are, they're a legit Final Four team.
Yeah, Iowa State should definitely be above Arizona there. I don't know. Again, too much respect to Arizona. Iowa State was good enough to be a 1 seed coming into the tournament. Obviously, they gave the 1 seed to North Carolina, but this Iowa State team, that game against Washington State, they did not struggle in. They
Mhm.
went back and forth in the first half, but they came out of halftime and they put Washington State away. It was not really a game in the second half, and obviously, South Dakota State never stood a chance. So I definitely think Iowa State is a threat in this tournament.
Well, they moved Illinois up. Now Illinois was originally at 12. They moved him to 7. With all due respect, I just, the wins that they came up with was Morehead State and Duquesne. Okay, and I no shade meant on those fine institutions; they're good. But again, I just don't think that Illinois has been tested yet.
I agree, and yeah, they destroyed the opponents they played, but like you said, Duquesne was really a team that wasn't supposed to be there from the A10.
Hey,
They were not good. They were good. They did have a winning
mm-hmm,
conference record, and they were in the top half of the conference, but
mm-hmm,
they were not as good as the 4 or 5 teams ahead of them in the
right,
conference, and they had to go on that run just to make it in the conference
mm-hmm.
tournament. So, absolutely, I agree with you. Um, we'll see what this Illinois team is made of because they're going to be playing Iowa State next. But yeah, this is they're a team that definitely hasn't been tested.
Then we got Duke, which is an 8 seed. Originally, they were a 13. I don't have any problem moving Duke up. I don't know that I would have moved them to 8, but definitely moving them up. They beat a very interesting and very uh, talented James Madison team, and you know it's beating them by 38 points basically is an impressive feat because James Madison is not a bad basketball team.
Yeah, Duke definitely dominated in that game. It was ridiculous, but I still don't think they're this great team. And frankly, I would put Marquette ahead of them and Illinois just because
Yeah.
Marquette played their first game of the tournament. They were missing Iguodaro, and they finally had, a full healthy team against Colorado. And yeah, okay, maybe they struggled at the end there, and Colorado made it a game. But Marquette was leading that whole time. I was on Colorado.
Mhm.
I watched that game. Yeah, Colorado covered by a half point, but they had the lead maybe once or twice in the entire game, and they led by 1 point, and it was not for very long. So Marquette, I think wherever they fall on this list should be higher than the last two teams.
They're coming up. Number 9 is Gonzaga, and I have no trouble moving them up either. Uh, this is another one where you have to trust the coach, right? And Mark Hughes been here, and Mark Hughes has his team playing. Now they did beat two teams that were they beat McNeese State, and then they beat a very depleted Kansas team. So I don't know if you can gauge anything on that, but I do think that they looked good playing, and we'll have to see. Now, number 10 is Marquette, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Marquette, in my mind, is possibly, you might be able to move them up all the way to 5.
Yeah, I agree, move Gonzaga up, but I don't know how you can justify putting them ahead of Marquette. As you said, they
Right.
beat McNeese and a watered down Kansas team. Not to mention you have them ahead of Tennessee and Creighton as well.
Right.
Like this is exactly like when Gonzaga beat St. Mary's in the last game of the season, and everybody just crowned them. They're the best in the conference, even though they had the worst conference record. And St. Mary's also beat them in their house. None of that counts. This Gonzaga team is amazing. And then what happened? They went and lost to St. Mary's in the conference. So look, we can pump Gonzaga up as much as we want, and I very well think they could beat Purdue this week. They have the team to do so, but they're not getting past the Elite Eight. There's no way.
Here's our Marquette team at 10, and the original seed was 7, so they literally dropped them, which I can't figure that out.
And they got healthier. Imagine that, right?
Right.
That's where the logic doesn't come in.
I mean, they beat Western Kentucky in what was, one. It wasn't a. It was more of a defensive, half court, do what you have to do to win type of game, and they did. Then they turned around and then they ran Colorado. They ran with Colorado, and that was the game that you got into high numbers there, and so I don't see why they penalized them by moving them down, from a 7 seed down to a 10 seed, because to me, the eye test showed that Marquette was a much better team than, the 3 teams we talked about that's ahead of them.
Yeah, too much patting Gonzaga and Illinois on the back there.
Creighton, and we said this before the beginning of the tournament, that Creighton was going to make a run, that they were very talented, and they beat Oregon in double overtime, which was an epic just an epic way to get into the Sweet 16. But this is a good basketball team, and they're just not getting any other respect that I think that they deserve.
Yeah, I'm shocked at how much Tennessee has dropped. I totally agree. Creighton's a great team, but I can justify their ranking because they struggled with Oregon. They needed overtime to win that game. Yeah, they blew them out in overtime, which is very hard to do, but we'll see, right? Oregon hung with them in that game. We'll see what happens in this next one. Tennessee, I'm just shocked hasn't been on the list yet because they're a 2 seed, and from the sounds of it, they blew St. Peter's out by 30 in the first round. Yeah, I didn't love the way they played Texas. I didn't think Texas was that good, and they didn't cover the spread in that game. But I still don't think Tennessee should be as low as where we're going to find them on this list.
Well, you're going to find them next. And I totally agree with you on Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee played phenomenal basketball. They beat Texas, and they beat Texas, and they shot under 34%.
Yeah, they didn't play well in that game.
Yeah, and they still
Still
won.
won.
So they got the athletes. They're not getting a lot of love, and they were a 5 seed, and um, that I just think Tennessee's a better basketball team now. Clemson is number 13 on this list, and I came out. That was one of my first things I said. I didn't know how they got this far, but evidently they do. Um, they beat they beat a New Mexico team that's not bad. They beat a Baylor team, not bad as well. So we'll see. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, and they're going to get an opportunity. 14, which originally was an 18 seed, was San Diego State. Again, I don't have any problem with this one, moving them up, because, you know, they were a team that they took out UAB in a close one. And then, second, the second time out, you know, they just continue to play like a team who deserves to be in the NCAA tournament. Now, do they deserve to make it to the Final Four? I don't think so, but they certainly have done well thus far. Then 15, we got Alabama, and I don't know what to make of them.
That's a shock to me. I don't think they should be that low.
Mm-hmm.
I know Clemson beat them earlier this season. I would still put them ahead of Clemson. I think they're better. I'm with you. I don't quite know what Alabama is, but they played a good Grand Canyon team, that dominated St. Mary's and won by like 20 points in that game. I don't think people realize how good Grand Canyon was. Yeah, Alabama struggled in that game. And mainly in the second half, though, Alabama dominated the first half. And only in the second half did I think, maybe Grand Canyon was starting to come back. But they never really I think they took the lead maybe like once or twice, but they never really got a grip of that game. And then eventually Alabama just got a hold and ran away with it. So I think Alabama is a tricky team that people are underestimating in this tournament. They were supposed to be one of the best teams in the tournament last year, and they fizzled out. I believe it was in this round. I have to check. I don't quite remember what round they lost in, but I think Alabama's playing with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. We'll have to see what they do.
Well, Mark Sears is their point guard. And this kid is headed to the pros. He's a John Stockton kind of quarterback on the court. And Alabama's going to go as far as Mark Sears can take him. He finds the open man. He's not. I mean, he's a point guard who can shoot if he needs to, and has no trouble doing that. But he's the kind of guy who could put the tide on his back especially in high pressure situations. But it's all gonna boil down to how his teammates around him give him the options to help him. And so keep an eye on Mark Sears, and I assure you that any game Alabama's going to play in is going to be close in these next couple of rounds.
Yeah,
definitely. And that puts NC State at the bottom, by the way.
Yeah, no problems with that.
No,
absolutely. They're the lowest seed left in the tournament, and I think it's a rightful. They're a team that doesn't really belong in the tournament. Losing conference record. Yes, they got hot, but even the teams they've played in the tournament, I forget who did they have in the first round. I think it was
they beat Texas Tech.
They did beat Texas Tech, but Texas Tech was a very they weren't like a great Big 12 team. No. Even they were iffy towards the end of the season. The only reason they got hot is because they finished the season with West Virginia and Oklahoma State, teams like that, like the games you needed to win, and then proceeded to blow them out. But yeah,
well, here's the thing that how they got into 3-16, is they beat Oakland in overtime.
Yeah, that was the other thing, right? So they almost lost. I remember because I was on Oakland in that game, and they almost lost to Oakland. Oakland was right in that game to the end. So yeah, I don't see them going much further.
Ironically, I had mentioned free throws. Ironically, it was Oakland who missed some free throws at the end of the game that could have sent them past, North Carolina State and not to win, but they chunked on the free throws.
Yeah, definitely didn't have to go to overtime that game.
No, no, that was one that nobody had to go anywhere. It was what it was. So anyway, so that's the reseeding of the 16 teams that are left in the Sweet 16, and you know all kinds of crazy. We're gonna have plenty of time to talk about these upcoming games on Thursday and Friday. Also, some things to look out for this week. Obviously, it's the beginning of baseball season, which will happen on Thursday, and it'll be fun to see how things are going. We can find out, what the Otani saga comes out with in the next few weeks, and we'll see how that goes. And also coming up this weekend, for those of you who like football, the UFL kicks off. So, you add a little bit of NBA basketball in there, you add a little bit of soccer, you add a little bit of the college madness that continues because you got the women still playing. And we got a full week of fun stuff to look at. So we will have some fun. We will hopefully not have the gremlins that have caused us grief here the last 45 minutes. But anyway, more importantly, um, let's get to your picks for the day. That something so that people know where to get them and how important it is to just run in there and grab them.
Yeah, make sure you check out my premium picks at bigal.com, pickadvisor.com, and theinsidersroom.com. The links are in the description below. All I got tonight is just one NBA play. It's not a heavy night, not a ton of sports. But tomorrow we got some some Euro Cup qualifiers. This will be the three finals for the last three spots up for grabs. I'll have some plays up for that, as well as some college basketball. The NIT is back tomorrow, and I'll have NBA as well, and obviously as we get closer to the weekend, MLB plays as well. So make sure you check all that out.
There you go. All right. Thanks for coming by, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We will iron them out for tomorrow. And we hope that you had a good time. For Amadeus, I'm Jim. Happy Monday, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow.